So in our last segment, we talked about these letters in the center of the wheel and how they correspond to these 12 signs, and they also correspond to the actual constellations themselves. They have a similar form. And so that kind of gave us some confirmation that, yes, there's a connection here. All right, so let's start at the center and we'll work our way out. All right, so here we have the beautiful star Spica. Its Hebrew name is Zemek, and it represents the star in Virgo in a sheaf of wheat that she's holding right here. That's that same star. Okay, so Zemek is a word, is a name, it refers to a branch, and it's used to refer exclusively to the Messiah, the seed of the woman. Okay, so since he's at the center of all of this, I put his star in the center. Pretty bright star. Okay, then extending out beyond that are the familiar glyphs.
Sorry, Robert, just what was it, the Hebrew word for that? Was it Zemek?
Yes, it's like T-C-E-M-E-C-H, something like that.
Zimag, Zadi Mem Chet.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. All right, so that's that star. And then the glyphs. And these glyphs mean a lot more to me now than they have for a long time, especially the glyph for Virgo, which is the letter M and a fish. And then Scorpio has the same letter. Now, they all seem to say that in astrological circles that the M stands for the maiden. But they can't say the same for the letter M in Scorpio, right? That's not the maiden. There's no woman in this sign. And what we're going to find is that this letter M, one that has a fish symbol attached to it, the other that has a stinger attached to it, is going to refer, I believe, to the Messiah, Mashiach. And it's also going to relate to Moses, because that's what's going on in these signs. All right, so those are the glyphs. And then beyond that, I have the Paleo-Hebrew letters. The sun on the horizon, going around the clock, a man with his hands raised up, a tent peg, a plow or a weapon, a fence or a gate, and so forth, all the way around. These letters, the meaning of these letters, I have further up here, just above the modern script version of these letters, I'll have the meaning. So the letter Kuf represents time, going down, darkness, division. There's a letter, there's this numerical value, and it has it's the 19th letter. This number in Virgo is extremely, extremely significant. It's going to give us a lot of information about this sign and what's being represented in this sign. We're really going to start getting into the meat of this here pretty soon, because I haven't even begun to really get going yet. All right, so beyond these letters are the Hebrew months and their meaning, what they relate to. So Elul, we are currently in the month of Elul right now. To search, to reflect, to repent, become pure, holiness. And you're going to see that the meaning of this month corresponds to the, corresponds to Bethula, which is a virgin, which implies to be separate, a bride, right? To be holy, to be pure. All of that is tied into this woman, which represents Elohim's people, Israel. There to be all of this. Okay, and then beyond the months, I have beside the months, I have the corresponding calendar dates. I didn't put the specific date. I believe August, September is like 23rd to September 22nd, but there's different, sometimes they might be off by a day or two, and I don't really know exactly for sure, but I can say that it falls within August and September, late August, early September, if that's going to be when the sign is. So I left that up for interpretation a little bit when it comes to the actual date. Okay, and then I have the names of the Hebrew of the signs in Hebrew, what they mean. So we already went over Bethula, Maznaim, or the balances, to weigh, to test, to prove. These are all very, very significant words here that we can do word searches on and relate stories of the children of Israel to these words. You should be thinking about the book of Exodus when you read this, okay? And the law given at Mount Sinai, the 5 books of the law, the number 5 associated with the letter Hey. And so those are the Hebrew names. And then I have the actual constellations. And what I did to make this more beautiful is I put the brightest star or the brightest object in each constellation to overlay it with it, to just kind of garnish the heavens as it were, right, with some of these beautiful stars. And so we have the star Spica. Revelation 12, you have the woman, right? She's clothed with the sun, the moon under her feet. Well, yeah, that's the way it works in the heavens too. Exactly like that, right? You have Antares, the star Antares, which is kind of a gaseous type planet. It gives off like a gaseous plume. And so I put his, represents the heart of the scorpion. So I overlaid the constellation with Antares right there. And pretty much all of them have a significant star. This is the star Fomalhaut right here in the eye of the fish. Pisces, Aries, they all have a celestial object. Here you have the Pleiades on the shoulder or back of the oxen. And it's bright star Aldebaran, the bullseye, and so forth. Oh, and you also notice that I have the moon. So I have the 12 moons, the beginning of a month. And so I have them separating each of these divisions. And then I have the Hebrew tribes. So there's for Judah, for the sign of Aryeh, the lion, Leo, is Judah. His name means celebrated, praised, revere, worship. And then I have scriptural references that tie to Judah, what his father Jacob said of him, what Moses said, and some other scriptures that tie into this lion. And I do this with all the signs. Naphtali means to wrestle, to overcome, to prevail. That's all associated with this woman right here. Asher, what does his name mean? Happy, blessed, honest, be level. That's all directly related to the scales of Libra, right? Which represents the law. Happy are those, right? Blessed are they that do his commandments, right? That they may enter into the city, right? You shall have honest scales to be level. It's interesting that in this sign is when you have the autumnal equinox, where the sun, where the day and the night are equal in time and length, right? To be level. Dan, to judge, contend, strive. This is all going to relate to the story of the children of Israel in the wilderness and all the way around, okay? Now, to the on either side of this, you notice I have all this color-coded. So for Virgo, for Bethula, she's in red, Libra's in orange and yellow and so forth. And the colors to the side, the constellations to the side, just look for the color, and those colors are going to match. So the corresponding minor constellations of Virgo are going to be Coma, the mother and child, Centaurus, and Boaz, the herdsman, right? And then what I have under each of these constellations, these minor constellations, are the most important scriptures, the most significant scriptures that relate to this constellation, this desired son, right? The promised son, the promised child, and so forth with all of these. They all go around, right? These 3 minor constellations here are going to relate to Libra, same color of orange, and corresponding scriptures. Okay, so you just follow those around, all the way around, from right over to the left, and we end up in with minor constellations of the lion, with Hydra and Crater and Corvus. This is all going to relate to Babylon. Remember, Daniel was thrown in a den of lions. Babylon is represented by a lion in King Nebuchadnezzar's and Daniel's vision of the 4 beasts, right? The first was like a lion that represented Babylon, right? But it's also, there's duality in these signs. Yeshua is the lion of the tribe of Judah, and Satan, Hasatan, is as a roaring lion, right? Roaming about, seeking whom he may devour. So it all ties to Babylon, but it also can tie to specifically to Hasatan and also to Yeshua. All right. This scripture right here is a scripture that we read in our first segment, where Balaam is describing Israel in terms of the zodiac signs. Aquarius, Pisces, Taurus, Sagittarius, Leo, they're all mentioned right there. So I put that there. There's over 300 scriptural references here, and many more that will be coming out in my book and future presentations. All right, so now let's go down here. And so in brief, I have some scriptural references in this wheel, but when it comes to the actual signs, so like for Bethula, well, I don't have any scripture, right? So you just go down here, and there you find her, same color, red, right? And here I give a summary statement of what part of Israel's history is being talked about here. And then I give scriptural references, quite a few here, right? You'll recognize that first Genesis 3:15, the seed of the woman, right? That's going to relate to Virgo. And his woman all throughout scriptures. Now you notice the overall heading here, the history of Israel in the Old Testament. So the first 6 signs are going to relate to Israel's history in the Old Testament. The last 6 are going to relate to the history of Israel in the New Testament. Pisces kind of overlaps both. So that's kind of like the turning point is in Pisces. That's the recovery of the 2 houses of Israel, which began under, who was it, Cyrus, who set the captives free out of Babylon. They were all set free. And by that time, he had dominion over the whole earth. He was a world, leader at that point. And so even the captives up in Assyria were also free to return back to the land. And so this is the return of the 2 houses of Israel, which began in those days, but it also further begins in the time of Yeshua, where he comes to call what? The lost sheep of the house of Israel, right? And he begins by calling 2 fishermen, right? Peter and Andrew. Peter is also nicknamed or surnamed, what was that name again? Cepheus, right? So Cepheus and Andrew, and they were fishers. And Yeshua saw them in the boat and he says, come and follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. He's fulfilling the prophecy in Jeremiah 16:16, where it says, I will send for many fishers and I shall fish for them out of all the places where they were scattered. See that? It's perfect, right? So, and then you just go down and that covers, all 12 signs in Israel's history. All right, now over here, I have how all the constellations fit together, right? Because I kind of have them separated up here in the wheel, so you can't really see how they interact with each other other than you can see the sequence and then how they follow each other. But here, you can see how they all tie together and you can draw more conclusions. You see, for instance, Virgo, the woman, right? And there's that Hydra, there's that serpent, that water serpent that we read about in Revelation 12, lurking nearby, right? You see that she's standing upon the scales, right? What does that mean, right? You see the scorpion attacking the scales. What does that mean? You see Ophiuchus lifting up the serpent and crushing the head of the scorpion. You see an altar that's upside down. What's that about, right? So we're going to get into that in our next segment. But this is very valuable. And this is going to be available on my website by the end of the month. I'm going to have an expanded poster just on this. It's going to be 18 by 24, so you'll get a large view of this. The names will be easier to see, be more legible, be very sharp, and that'll be available on a donation basis. So look for that at the end of this month, September 2022, and you'll find it there. In fact, I'm going to be using the very first one that I printed out just this week for my next presentation, where you're going to see these constellations blown up a lot larger, and it'll be very clear to see and to read the names of these constellations. All right, so then in the midsection here, we have, first of all, a disclaimer. I gotta mention the disclaimer, right? So the information presented in this study is drawn from a strictly biblical and Hebraic understanding of the signs which God placed in the firmament at creation, right? Genesis 1:14. They were not to be dismayed at these signs as the heathen were, right? However, fortune telling, divination, monthly prognosticators, the horoscope, right? The worship of the sun, the moon, the stars were all strictly forbidden. And then I give scriptural references for that. But aside from these denunciations, there are no prohibitions in seeking to understand how the heavens declare the glory of Elohim, right? And then I talk about the Mazzaroth, what it is. I give the Hebrew definition from Strong's Concordance, the scriptural reference, it's reading there and what it means, and what it's not. And then I get into in this section how the children of Israel are related to the stars that we talked about in our first section, and the number 12. And then we also have the keys to understanding the Mazzaroth, the 12 Hebrew letters, the keys to the Mazzaroth, to the 12 houses. They're going to open those houses with these keys. And that is going to be the name of my book, as I mentioned, the keys to the Mazzaroth. Right, and so I talk about how these letters work and how to study them to discover what these signs are talking about. And then over here, so in my wheel, let's go back to my wheel here. Cancer, I have as an eagle. Now, where is that coming from? Because Cancer is right, it's supposed to be the crab. But what I've discovered in other zodiacs, especially in Egyptian, it's represented by a head of an eagle. And also I read in The Glory of the Stars by Raymond Capt, how he makes the point that this was most likely its original depiction, because the star names do not match up with that of a crab. And a crab is nowhere mentioned in the Bible. There's not going to be any mention of a crab, but all these other symbols are very familiar symbols that you'll see throughout the scripture, especially in the Old Testament, well, both Testaments really. But the crab is not. So I felt like I needed to give a more of an explanation for this. Notice that it's related to the letter ayin, value of 70, and it has everything to do with eyesight. Those who know Hebrew, right? Ayin has to do with the eye, to see, to obey, to understand, represents light. But down here, I give a full explanation of how, you notice how the crab is positioned over the head of Hydra, right? Showing its dominance over it, its victory over it. Well, the crab is not the natural predator of the water serpent. It is the eagle. See that? And so that's what this section covers. And even the outline of the constellation of Cancer is that of these two wings on the top there, spread out over an enclosure, with Praesipe, the beehive, the manger, positioned directly right in this specific spot where the Ark of the Covenant would have been located within this tabernacle courtyard and the tabernacle itself, right? Right there, perfectly positioned, spreading his wings out over his people, those who are within this linen, fine linen, the righteousness of the saints, those who are within this boundary, within this curtain, this courtyard, are those who are safe, those who are sheltered under his wings. We read Psalms 91. It's all about being sheltered under his wings, abiding in the shadow of, right, under his shadow. So that's that. So that is that's the overview of the poster. I got some footnotes at the bottom, but that will conclude this this segment. And in our next segment, we'll start going over the first sign of Virgo and see how far we get.
Thank you, Robert.
Mm-hmm. So let me go back to
It was just
live
wonderful.
here.
Thank you so much.
Here I am. Okay. So yeah, that's a mouthful. That's a mouthful.
Well, you did a great job. Does anybody
Thank
have
you.
any questions?
I should say that I have it available in 2 different sizes. So I have it as an 18 by 24, which is better for studying. You can lay it out on the table and look up the scriptures. A lot of people like the larger version for display and to frame it and just see everything bigger. That's a 24 by 36.
Very nice. I encourage everybody to order a chart or two. We want to sow into light and righteousness and righteous works and restoration.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Robert, first off, you're
We
wonderful.
want to cleanse the tabernacle. We want to cleanse the sanctuary of the astrology stuff, right? And get to the wheat.
Yes.
Robert, you're a wonderful speaker, first off, and the eagle, where the heart, where the tabernacle would be under his wings, that just blows my mind. So how did it get changed? Who changed it to a crab? Was that something deceptive? So we wouldn't, Hasatan could hide that, or what do you think about that? Who changed it?
You know, that part of it is a mystery, and I haven't been able to find anything in Jewish writings, and even my friend who is translating the Hebrew Apocrypha, he can't find it anywhere either. And so I'm tempted to put the crab back in, but still have my section on the eagle, because I'm like 99% sure, because the Hebrew letters, again, the Hebrew letters, the letter ayin has nothing to do with a crab. It has everything to do with an eagle. An eagle is known by its eyesight. The sequence of events that you're in, when you come to, I'm sure we won't get that far, so I can just go ahead and tell you now. But when you get past Aries, let me just give you a really quick overview of some of these later signs, because we won't have time to get to them today. But you get past Aries. Aries is the Lamb of God. That's the Passover lamb. That's going to refer to Yeshua, right? When he was here and he offered his life, right? You get to the next sign is Taurus. It's the oxen. It's the disciples going out to preach the gospel. That's Taurus. But they were to go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, not to the Gentiles yet, right? It's not till you get to like the stoning of Stephen, and to Peter's vision, right, of the sheep let down. Arise, Peter, kill and eat, not so, Lord, right? Trying to teach them a lesson to not be afraid to go to the Gentiles. They're not dogs anymore. I've cleansed them, right? That's in the next sign. Gemini are the twins. The Gemini is known as the twins. And the first reference to twins in the Bible is what? What do you think of when you think about the twins? Anybody?
Esau.
Yes, Jacob and Esau. They were
Jacob
twins.
and
That's the
Esau.
first mention of twins in the Bible. The Hebrew letter that's associated with Gemini is stomach, and it has a value of 60. Well, guess how old Isaac was when the twins were born unto him? 60. It's like everything is just so spot on. So Gemini represents the times of the Gentiles. We're still in the times of the Gentiles. And one of the minor constellations of Gemini is the hare, the rabbit. Also in the Egyptian zodiac, it's a serpent. And Orion, hunter, is crushing its head. But it's the deceiver. And so mixed in with the times of the Gentile, it's this deceiver. And Paul warned about this, all right? There would be a great falling away, right? And that deceiver would come, the Antichrist. He would come and would lead away, he would deceive, he would sit in the temple of God, showing himself as God and all that sort of thing. But that's the times of the Gentiles. And the times of the Gentiles lead all the way up until the final events, right? And then it opens up more to the Jews, I think. But that leads you to the final events. That's the next sign of Cancer. Now you're just as the children of Israel were led out of Egypt, right? They were led out of Egypt, and you get to Exodus 19:4, and Elohim says, "You see how I delivered you from the Egyptians, and how I bore you on eagle's wings, and I brought you unto myself," right? He brought them through 10 plagues. The first 3 fell on everybody, but the last 7 only fell on the Egyptians, the bad guys, right? The same thing happens again at the end of time. He's going to bear his people, represented in Psalms 91. It's all about that. He's going to bear his people. We're going to be under his wings, right? And he's going to bring his people on himself. Yeshua said before he left the disciples, let not your heart be troubled. You believe in Elohim, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I am going to prepare a place for you. And if I go, I'll come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also, right? He's going to bear us on eagle's wings. He's going to bring us to, it's the wedding process, right? He's going to bring us to the Father. He's going to bring us to the bridal chamber, and we're going to be, right? That's exactly what happens when he brought the children of Israel. He bore you on eagle's wings and through the plagues unto himself to be espoused. right? You are now my wife. I'm your husband, right? I'm your Elohim. Thing. That's Cancer. That's the sign of Cancer. And it has everything to do with rest, has everything to do with sight, the seeing. Eye has not seen nor ear heard, neither has entered into the heart of man the things that God has prepared for those who love him, right? We will see, we will understand. Behold, he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him. That's Cancer. That's Ayin. It's not a crab. When you come to the last sign, in Leo, now you're dealing with Lion. Now you're dealing with Babylon. Babylon has the golden cup in her hand. You see in the sign of Babylon, you have Hydra, and it has a cup on its back, but it also has a raven picking at it, supper of the birds, right? At the end of time. So I really strongly believe that it got switched over to a crab. Not only that, but also the two minor constellations. There's three, but two of the minor constellations that are associated with Cancer is Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. And there's these two bears, right? The greater bear and the lesser bear. And they have these huge uplifted tails. Well, bears don't have tails, but it got confused. The principal star in Ursa Major, or what we call the Big Dipper, the asterism of Ursa Major, is Dubhe, and Dubhe refers to a fold, but the word Dobe refers to a bear, and so they got them mixed up, and we ended up with these bears going around. Their circumpolar constellations, and they go around the center, well, the North Star, which is in the tail of the Little Dipper. When we get to the imagery on this other poster here, you're going to see some really cool stuff. Anyhow, so Cancer has a lot of problems, and I think this Hebrew letter is going to get you back on course. It's going to get us all back on course. What these signs were to represent. The Hebrew letter, man, that's where it's at. Okay, next question.
So Robert, I think that was part of also what Mazzaroth Pub was speaking about, that it wasn't a crab, but it was an eagle. And I think he talked about Ezekiel 10. Have you looked at Ezekiel 10 in terms of these constellations with the four faces of the cherubim?
Oh yeah, I know about that. Yeah, sure.
Have
Yeah.
you looked at those in your constellation research?
Yeah, well, yeah, those the four beasts around the throne, you're talking about those?
Yeah.
They mark the four seasons, the four royal stars in the constellations of Leo, which is the lion, Aquarius is the man,
Yes.
and the oxen, the man, the eagle, and what's the last one? It escapes me.
Lion.
Yeah, the lion, the eagle, the oxen, and the man. Yeah, there you go, those four.
And they're at quadrants, right? They're at every
right.
3 ones.
Well, this is where it's a little tricky because they have the eagle in Scorpio, but Scorpio is a scorpion. It's
Yes.
not an eagle. So I don't know. It's
Okay.
the eagle is in there's no the other three, the lion, the man, and the calf, the oxen. The sun is going right through those. They lie directly on the ecliptic, on the path of the sun.
Mhm.
But when they come to the eagle, they have Scorpio as well. What they do is they steal from a sign, two signs that are next to it, Aquila, which is part of the sign in Capricorn. Actually, it belongs to Capricorn, but they're taking it from Capricorn and they're moving it over into Scorpio. And so, yep, there's our eagle. Right.
Mhm.
There's also some talk in Jewish literature where the prince of Dan is the tribe that corresponds to Scorpio. They didn't like the idea of being represented by a serpent. And so they changed it to an eagle who conquers the serpent. Right. Because the eagle is the well, he conquers the serpent, but there's a crab, but there's also a serpent in Cancer and Scorpio. So Scorpio is the scorpion, but then you also have Ophiuchus with the serpent. He's lifting up the serpent, right? So there's a serpent,
Right.
and apparently Dan, I forget the name of the prince, but he changed it from a serpent to an eagle, but that's not what his father said of him. His father said that Dan is a serpent, by the way.
Right.
Right.
I have
Yeah.
one more question, and I imagine other people have this question too. Do you look at at events that happen, like for instance, the Queen dying? And do you look at the stars and see signs that signify that in some way?
No, I don't get into political events or stuff like that so much. So I've seen people go too far off into different directions when they try to plug every event that happens. What I stick to the Hebrew letters, I stick to the history of Israel. Anything that directly affects the children of Israel is tied to the stars. That's how I see it. I relate everything to their history in the Old Testament, the New Testament, what's prophesied of them in the future. If it's tied to scripture and the scripture ties directly to those signs and those Hebrew letters, then I feel safe. I feel like I'm on solid ground.
Okay.
But to go off on different tangents, these other smaller things, I don't think queens die all the time. A lot of things happen over and over again. And we think, oh, it's the fulfillment of Revelation 12, or it's a fulfillment of this, that, or the other. And they're not seeing the bigger picture, or they're not even aware of the bigger picture. Like when we come to Revelation 12, back in 2017, when the stars aligned, the planets aligned, and they thought it was a sign of Virgo. And so everybody was getting on board with that. And some people still strongly believe that was the sign that was talked about, and they don't even understand the original symbolism there. You got to trace that symbolism back to Exodus, the woman being born on eagle's wings. The woman in Revelation 12, she has 2 wings of an eagle. She flies into the wilderness, right? And who's the man-child, right? She was in pain to be delivered, right? And her child was caught up to Elohim and to his throne. Well, who's that? That was the Messiah. But they're applying it all the way to the future, a lot of it ties into futurism, and I don't espouse the futuristic interpretation of prophecy. I follow the historicist method, where events are gradually being fulfilled as we go through time. You have the futurist, which is everything happens in the future still, or where we are right in time right now, or the preterist, everything happened in the past. Nero was the Antichrist. You don't have to worry about the Antichrist. It already happened. It's already done. And then you have the historicist, which began, the things which must shortly come to pass, right? In Revelation 1, starts there and it ends, and there's a fulfillment of these events from beginning to end. It's not all at the end or all at the beginning. It's a progression of the fulfillment of these prophecies.
Okay.
That's where I come from.
I have one more question. I hate to keep asking so many questions, but
Yeah.
in Egypt, obviously they were fascinated or fixated on the constellations and on the Shamayim. In the temple of Dendera, there was a Mazzaroth, on the ceiling of that. Do you feel like that corresponds to currently? Was that accurate?
Yes, it's accurate, but it presents the stars and the equinoxes where they were at that time. And so they'll have like four figures in the 4 quadrants, and they represent the vernal equinox and the autumnal equinoxes. And where they're positioned shows you when this star chart, when this atlas was made. It was made right during that time, during, what was it, the 5th dynasty or something like that. You can trace the design of this Mazzaroth back to that time period based upon where the equinoxes were as to where we are now. They have a lot of the same symbols. The symbols are a little bit different, but they do have the 12 main zodiacal constellations that we have, except they have the eagle. Well, there's more than one Egyptian zodiac, so I don't think all of them have an eagle, but there is one. I think it's the one of Dendera that has the eagle head in it, or a crow, but it's a bird. It's definitely a bird. So those correlate. But then some of the minor constellations, like you have Aries, and then you have just a leg of the lamb. It's like a separate constellation, just a leg, and it ties it horizontally to the womb of Isis in their theology, or Virgo would be the woman. So yeah, I studied that. It is pretty interesting. And it's yeah, it's a little harder to understand everything that's in there and the way they represent all the deacons. So there's 36 deacons, and they have like these 36 individuals that stand around it, and they represent the 36 deacons. But some of the imagery is a little different.
And I have one last question. We've heard before, I've read before, I'm sure a lot of us have, that the position of the pyramids on the Giza Plateau, that they mirror the belt of Hercules, and that there's some kind of a correlation to the geography of the earth. Do you, as far as its position?
Yes, so they actually mirror the belt stars of Orion. Not Hercules, but Hercules is they both have the club in their hands, and they're both related. Hercules is in the sign of Scorpio, and Orion is in the sign of Taurus, and they are opposing signs, so they are related. They both have the club in their hand. Hercules is wearing the skin of a lion that he has slain, and he has his foot on Draco the dragon, and then in Taurus, in the opposing sign, you have Orion. And he has, he's holding up the head of a lion, and he's stepping on the foot of the hare, which is a serpent. So both of them are standing upon the same, they're both standing upon a serpent, and they both have the lion that they've dealt with, that they've destroyed.
Did you say the hare is a serpent?
Yes, the hare, the rabbit is also in the Egyptian zodiacs, it's a serpent.
Wow.
But the primary meaning is that it's a deceiver. A rabbit, pulling a rabbit out of a hat, to deceive.
Wow, that's deep.
Yeah, just wait.
Robert, when you were talking
Yeah,
about,
I'll tell you something else that probably won't come up in my presentation. So Orion is in the sign of Taurus, and Taurus relates to the 12 oxen, the 12 disciples. In Solomon's temple, there were 12 oxen that held up the sea, right? And they were facing in different directions. That relates to the disciples who were to go into all the world. They were oxen, and they were to plow the field and sow the seed. The field is the world. The seed is the word of God, right? The word of Elohim. And they were to sow that seed. And so they're oxen. And it's interesting because I think it was in the house of Jason, and they're saying that these men have come here also who have turned the whole world upside down, right, with their doctrine. Well, yes, because they're oxen. And the work of oxen is to plow. And the word plow means to turn over, to turn upside down, to turn over the earth. And so the disciples are directly related to these oxen who were turning the whole world upside down. But I say yes, that because they're oxen. That's what oxen are supposed to do. They're to plow the field.
That's awesome. I think Teza was asking a question there.
I can barely hear you guys, though. I got a really big.
She's a little bit hard to hear sometimes. I think maybe it's her mic.
yeah, sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Better, Teza. Thank you.
When you were talking about the Virgo, the Virgin, when it had the star in her hand, is there a branch in her other hand?
Yes. She's holding a sheaf of wheat, a wave sheaf that represents the harvest, the wheat harvest, right? It was during this time of the year when the virgins went out to the field, right, to reap the wheat, right? That's the harvest of the wheat. And in her other hand, she holds the branch. And that's what we're going to get into, our next segment. We're going to go right there and talk about this woman and the branch and what that signifies, and the sheaf and the Hebrew letter, and how it's going to relate to the story of Abraham and Sarah.
Yes, because you said in the beginning that the Messiah, it relates to the Messiah, to Yeshua himself.
He's going to be foreshadowed in the sign of Virgo, as well as he was the promised child from Genesis 3:15, but Isaac was also the promised child, and he relates, he who was willing to offer himself up, right, uncomplainingly, to his father Abraham, right? And so Isaac relates to, he's a messianic figure and relates to Yeshua. And so you have both stories being depicted in Virgo. I can't wait to get to Virgo. It's so cool. You're gonna be
Yeah.
blown away by how much detail is in. Well, Virgos are very detailed, and this sign, let me tell you, it is very detailed. It is packed full of information and symbolism.
Thank you.
Robert, do you feel that there's anything in the constellations that's shared that's about anything prior to Abraham?
That prior to Abraham and Sarah?
Yeah, like Noah or
Yeah,
Adam.
we'll get to that. Wait till we get to the next segment, and I'll answer that question.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Any other-
We're gonna
Can't
get right
wait.
into it.
Oh,
Can't
if
wait.
if you're talking about the,
I
if
can't
you're
wait either. I can't wait either. I'm
Okay.
so excited about this. It's just the most amazing journey of discovery. And I can't tell you how many times I had to tell the Father, slow down, slow down. I can't. It's too much. It's too much. And I'm just like laughing and overjoyed. I'm trying to write everything down as quickly as he's revealing things to me, because it's like, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I can't believe how all this is fitting so perfectly. And it's all been hidden from us because we haven't had the letters. And so all we've been getting is the gospel, the gospel, the gospel, the gospel. And that's great, but there's so much more.
Yeah, I just today prior to class shared something in the group, another group that's in Boise. They asked a question about, 2 words and what what anybody's understanding was. And I said, well, I go, you guys know that the Hebrew understanding is what's important, not our English concept of it. And so I gave them a little bit to look into about the letters and the paleo, and I got slammed. And they said it has nothing to do with the context of in Tanakh. And I said,
Nothing to do with what?
the context of that the ancient Hebrew has nothing to do with its context in Tanakh. And I thought that doesn't even make sense. I said, all one would have to do is to research the Hebrew, because your ancient Hebrew is going to correspond to the word in, the modern Hebrew scriptures. But I just am so excited to see that how you tied that all in, and that right there, the willingness to dig unlocks the key to restoring. And that is just so exciting to me.
Yeah, because again, without these letters, I don't know, you don't need to know a whole lot of Hebrew. All you need to do is just look up the Hebrew letters, get a definition. What I did is not only, go into Hebrews for Christians and ancienthebrew.com and, sites like that, but also went to some Jewish sources, and I watched some YouTube videos or some Jewish rabbis explaining the meaning of the letters for added insight, right?
Yeah.
I searched everywhere because I don't know Hebrew. I mean, not really. But anybody can do what I did. Just look up the meaning of those letters, watch a few YouTube videos, get as much information about that letter as you can, find out the number, numerical value. But what you need to really see the story is you need the framework. You need to know, okay, what time period are we dealing with in Virgo and all these different signs. Once you know the time frame you're in, then you know where to look for the letter Kuf and its meaning, and this darkness and this light and this division and the number 100 and the number 19.
I think,
right?
but
So
it's
that's what I'm going to give you today.
willingness.
I'm going to give you these time frames, and then that'll
so exciting.
open
So
things up.
exciting. Can't
Yeah.
wait. You say wait, I can't wait.
Daniel, did you have a question?
Just the thought that came to my mind is it's almost stupidly simple. You just need to give it time and just be methodical with it. Be patient with
Yeah,
it.
you need patience.
Yeah,
You need lots of
guidance.
patience. Here's the patience of the saints. You need patience to keep digging, right? To keep digging. Go for the gold. Dig. You want to go down. You want to go down as far as you can, right? And you don't need a bunch of fancy tools. We got the internet. We got
yeah, you
Strong's
got everything you
Concordance.
need there.
We don't have all the other researchable books. You don't need a lot to get going and figure this out. And I've already got a lot of it already out there. And I'm excited to see, once I give this information to everybody, what they're going to find, because, you know, more minds are going to look at things, you know, in other ways and see things that I missed. So I'm excited to see what other people find out too, because I've only been studying the Hebrew connection for 3 years now, but what if I've been studying it for 20 years or 30 years, or, you know, what would I know then? So if you guys are ready, if you can give me a couple of minutes, need a break, give my voice a break and get some water.
That sounds great. Everybody.
And I'll be back within just a few short minutes.
Okay, sounds great.
All right, thank you.
Everybody can take a little break, or you guys can talk amongst yourselves. And/or.
This is
I
so
want to
cool.
I want to know why Daniel painted a pirate face and mustache on his picture.
Yeah.
It looks like
Oh, I
maybe
hate
he's
it.
at a beach
gonna change it.
picture without a shirt on.
I was in the bathroom. It was before I cut my hair. I was getting like a nice medium length, but I just, for some reason, I felt like it needed a reset, and I really didn't want to cut it. So I wanted to like take a picture and see how it looked. And then I was like, okay, I can't take a serious picture of me. That feels way too vain. So I was like, I'm gonna make a pirate. You guys said you wanted a real picture of me. So there you go, for my profile instead of Clint Eastwood Spider-Man. But,
You're
I
a
think it
very
makes me
handsome
a
young
little bit more
man.
fitting.
Darla, did you get your goat milked?
Thank you. We decided we've got 8 gallons of milk in our refrigerator. We decided we'll just milk her tonight at 5. So we did that yesterday as well, because we had a vet come through and had to march about 7 cows through one of them marched through 3 times. Oh boy, we had trouble catching him at the head gate. So the vet was like, if we don't get him this time, that's pow, which means that's enough. We're done. We're done with him, because he's already learned twice that he can just push through and get on out that head gate. It became a game to him. And anyway, so we only milked her twice yesterday. But I was having a rough day, by the way, yesterday. I'm feeling better, and it helped me actually seeing what he was showing about this sign we're under right now in Elul. That helped me a lot. Yeah, it's just like a trying and a testing, and
Yeah.
it,
Just
it always
so pray for you.
thank you, Trish.
I truly
That
believe,
really helped me.
yeah, it will, because, and it's like nobody raises their hand and sign me up for grief, sign me up for
Right.
hardship, sign me
Yeah.
up, you know,
Hold the
but
rug out from under me. Just count me in. Yeah.
yeah, you know, beat me to a pulp. That's
Yeah.
what I want, you know,
Yeah.
but I have really come to believe that that is how, and I don't pray it upon anybody. I know that that's how my understanding of who he is and his trustworthiness and the veracity of his word has become so real to me, because when you have those moments of like, I can't do this,
Yeah.
I can't do this, it's impossible, and he goes, yes, thank you, now listen, you know, and he just is so compassionate, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. But it's not for the weak of heart. It's like not for wimps. And I think it's that willingness. And he doesn't take us deeper or harder or put any more of a burden on us. I mean, every single verse that's coming into my head right now is so real to me because of the situation that I've been through. And I so relate to what you shared. It's and the minute he wants you to do something else, he's going to show you.
Yeah.
He's going to show you where, he's going to show you how. Maybe he won't show you that it will be impossible for you to do anything but that, because you'll just go, no, I want truth, I want his will. And if you buck up against it, I'm speaking for myself, if I buck up against it, I get a lesson in that too. You know, I learned how, it's like fine tuning my interpretation or how I see circumstances
Yeah.
no longer belong to the way I looked at things and did things.
It's
know?
like the sweet is so sweet that it's worth enduring the bitter. Because
Exactly.
coming out the other side and the deeper connection that you obtain with Yahuwah from having to just cling on to him with everything that you've got,
Yeah.
it's so worth it. But when you know, oh, here comes another trial, like, when you get going through it enough times to recognize,
Yeah.
and I know this one that most of us went through earlier this year. This year has been a huge one, and it was so void of his presence and so barren that it didn't feel like that was ever going to happen. There was no coming out the other side. There wasn't even clinging on to that hope at some points, and yet the sweet is so much sweeter. It's
like,
so
I think of that verse as, where shall we go? There's no one else that has words of eternal life. Well, where are you going to go? What are you going to look into? What have you, it's like, exactly, Leah, totally. Anyways, I'm so glad that, and the other thing is, there's always his mercies are new every morning. Every morning.
And that's the biggest thing that I feel like he shows me is like, whenever I have a bad day, whenever I get hit from, every evil arrow that can come my way, the next morning it's better. It never fails. It's better the next morning. I just gotta make it through that day. I think Yahushua said something about, don't worry about tomorrow because every day's got enough evil of its own.
I mean, it's even in Psalms, weeping, I think it's Psalm 126, or it's at the end of it, weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning.
Yeah,
that's right. That's
How
right.
much more so when we wake up early to seek him.
And somebody said, look back at your track record. It's 100%. You're still alive. It's like, you're still here. He still has a hold of us.
Yeah.
So everything is enduring, persevering, being willing to submit. And I love you so much, and I'm so proud of you. And I just prayers. I'm like shaking my hands at you, throwing prayers at you.
Oh, thank you, sister. And I don't know if you've said this, but I could picture you just saying it if somewhere along the way, just like, I'm done. That's it. I'm just done. It's like, you get to that place, it's just like, just go to bed because tomorrow will be brand new.
Yep. Yeah. And that's another thing too. It's a very good thing.
Trying to get situated here.
Go to bed.
Thank you, Robert.
Go to bed, sleep, wake up, let him deal
You've
with
clearly had enough of today.
Absolutely.
Well, as it says in James 2, my brothers, count it all joy when you fall into various trials.
That's right.
I get to see him go up.
Yep.
Understand.
Anyways.
Can you hear us, Robert?
Okay.
I don't think you can hear.
How's everybody's brains? Are you still got room for more information?
We go.
Staying in there.
Yep.
Just letting you know that we've got Canada on board now. Leah's here. How's your signal today, Canada?
She sounded great.
She sounded okay for now.
Yeah, it's been having a few moments, but for the most part, awesome. And this is wonderful, wonderful teaching. Thank you so much.